To just wait to see what comes in and to be reactive to it is a poor way to invest.
Robert Brooker, having built and sold multiple successful businesses over the past 3 decades, he now savors life's fullness through travel, book writing, and time with loved ones. Today, Robert shares with us the very personal lessons gained from his remarkable journey, from managing wealth to secrets of happiness.
Do you want to be a 10% or 20% owner of some big company, or do you want to be 100% owner of a smaller company? In any exit, there's a luck element to it, right? Out of the 12 companies I bought, they all got good returns, they were good exits. And, if I roll the dice again, just by chance, if I keep doing it, something's not going to work out. People are forgotten very quickly, and that people overestimate their capacity for legacy. Is it possible to be smart from day one? Or do you have to make a lot of mistakes and be stupid before you can be smart?
Robert, thank you so much for being here. You're a very special friend and a very special guest for me.
Well, you're very special.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So what are the most important life lessons you've learned since you've achieved financial success?
It's easy to think you're going to be an investor. That's very hard to do. And it's probably not a good thing for an exiting founder to do, for a lot of exiting founders to do.
To be an investor?
To be an investor.
Do you mean like a full-time investor?
A full-time investor, or to really make that your primary thing.
An active investor.
Be active investor. Or one should have realistic expectations.
Okay.
That's number one. Secondly, I think it's, everyone has to define what's most meaningful for them. I think for me, my relationships with people around me that I, when I was very busy, running a business, that I didn't exercise so much, that's become more meaningful for me. That's become a large part of my focus at this time. That's what I'd say were the two things.
How do you choose the people you surround yourself with?
I try to have some mixture of people who make me feel good being around, that I hope is mutual, or should, and mixing that with, some novelty of sort of many people.
So you mentioned peer organizations before. So what role do they play in your life?
I think peer organizations, even more, for me, have been more, like when I was running businesses, the peer organization was of much more value to me than, let's say, than education. Let's say having an MBA from before, because it's very real time. And the people in the peer organization are doing, having sort of the same problems at the same time, and sharing information in real time, and having that mutual education is, I think super valuable. And so it's a important part of life. In investing, it's a little bit different. I think it's valuable. It's a slightly different formula for investing peer group, but I think peer groups in general are, what everyone's trying to accomplish is, I think it's sort of my preferred sort of method of education and guidance.
Did money make you happy?
By itself, no, but I think to the extent that it helps to enable time, availability of time, and to the extent that I can use that time to nurture my relationships, then I think there's a lot of happiness associated with that.
The money brought you time, and time brought you happiness.
Yeah.
Is that indirectly?
Yes, indirectly, yes.
What do you think the purpose of money is in your life? To buy time?
Yes. I think so, yeah. There's certainly material needs as well, but I think more meaningfully to me, at least, is the time.
What are the biggest mistakes you made as an entrepreneur?
There's just so many mistakes. But it's not.
But the most memorable ones.
Well, as an entrepreneur, when I was younger, my choice in businesses was I was just doing kind of what sounded cool at the time without much analysis or not, and made some suboptimal choices. And so, one has to ask oneself, or ask myself, was that inevitable? Is it possible to be smart from day one? Or do you have to make a lot of mistakes and be stupid before you can be smart? So maybe that's just part of the process. So there are countless mistakes. I think there's, you know, a little bit for, you know, for entrepreneurship, it's a little bit, it's less of a, well, it's less of a quality game than a quantity game. You know, if you make enough decisions, and if just 60% of them are good decisions, then you're okay. You make 40% bad decisions. And so, yeah, I mean, there was, you know, timing problems. There were industry, you know, poor decisions. There were certainly hiring decisions that were poor. I would say my track record of hiring people is maybe 50%. Actually, Rob, I think it's very hard to hire people. I know there's lots of methods and so forth to do it, and but I think that's really hard to do because people are set up to sort of deceive. You know, people are set up to, you know, psychology is someone who wants a position or a job is to not present themselves as they actually are.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to. And there are techniques to kind of get around that, but they're very imperfect techniques. But I'm not sure overall, you know, hiring track records, you know, overall are that great, maybe 50% or so. Maybe some people actually get better, but so lots of mistakes. But you know, fortunately, you know, there were enough things that went well. There was a lot of bad luck, but you know, for bad luck, there's often, you know, good luck too. So you have to appreciate the good luck.
What are the biggest mistakes you make as an investor?
Certainly thinking that, you know, that angel investing was a good asset class. That was a big mistake. Because as we talked, you know, because it's a terrible asset class. But it's maybe good for society to be an angel investor, but as a way to make money, I think it's a poor way. What else is an investor? You know, doing background checks on, you know, anything that you do professional background checks on. It's harder for young people. So if someone's 40 years old or older and if they're a bad actor, it'll show up with their background check, and you have to pay, you know, sometimes some thousands of dollars to do professional background, you know, criminal background, a lawsuit, that kind of thing. But anybody who's managing, like if it's a fund, if it's a general partner fund or something like that, like I believe strongly, if I'm, you know, multiple cases where doing background check is safe from a poor decision. So I think that's really important. To do that.
How do you define success today?
You know, I think having meaningful relationships, having health, having enthusiasm, you know, that's enough for me at this time.
And do you have role models?
You know, right now I don't. I should. I don't right now.
Why you should?
I don't know. I mean, I can't. I mean, you know, I feel like I'm very inspired by people I know. And people I read about, you know, and there's always something. I think everybody has something that's worthy of inspiration. But is there like one person like I want to be like that person? That person doesn't. I don't have such a person. Or I haven't found such a person.
Yeah. What keeps you up at night?
I'm sleeping pretty well.
Nothing.
Not too much.
How do you want to be remembered?
Most people are forgotten very quickly. And I think probably I'll be forgotten very quickly, but it would be nice if the people who are important in my life, you know, my family, my friends, for maybe a generation or two, remember me as a good father, husband, and grandfather, grandchildren, and that would be very satisfying to imagine that.
Who do you start with you telling me about your entrepreneurial journey, how it started and what you learned in the process?
So the entrepreneurial journey, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, you know, since a young age, like a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's that's its own story. But I worked initially in finance. I was at Lehman Brothers. And then I decided to start business at age 25. And it was absolutely a terrible business. It was such bad judgment. But I decided to go to Central Europe. I went to Hungary. I started with a partner a bagel shop. And that bagel shop lost so much money that we had to build 14 more to get to break even. And never did I work so hard for so little money. And that was the start of it. And then sort of the summary is that, you know, I tried multiple times starting companies with limited success. And at some point, after some years, I decided, I think I must have been, let's see, what was it, around 2000. So I was, so it was basically 20 years ago, decided that, you know what, I'm just going to buy companies that are already profitable. I don't want to have a burn rate and have to have that type of pressure, that type of stress. I want to buy companies that are already profitable, so a lot of the risk is taken out of it, and then hold it or potentially sell it in the future. And so that's what I did for 20 years.
So how many companies you owned that way so far?
So I bought, it was about 12 companies total that I bought, but they were really 4 platforms. So many of them were bolt-on acquisitions to existing platforms. So it ended up being really 4 separate companies, all of which are exiting at this time.
So when was that sort of liquidity that changed the life? Which one was that?
So the one that was really probably most transformational took place in 2007. So it was a business that I bought. Most of the businesses were software companies. There was one that was a manufacturing business. And that was I really wasn't intending to sell it, but it was one of those things like a lot of business owners that, you just sort of keep going. And then sometimes someone comes along. In this case, it was a strategic acquirer that said, okay, we want to acquire you. And if you say no, we're going to your competitor to acquire them. And maybe it's clearly like a tactic to get them to sell to you. But, the fact of the matter is that if the price is right, then why not sell? It's a little more complicated than that, of course, but I ended up selling, and it actually ended up being quite lucky because that was October 20th. I feel a lot of people who sell their businesses, they know the exact date, even like years later, they know the exact date that it's on. So it's October of 2007. And as you probably recall, the financial crisis, happened,
Sounds like a very good time to do it.
Very good time, and it was very highly leveraged. When I bought it, it was very high leverage. I leveraged it 4-to-1, so I had 1 debt service, and I think, it was a great business, it was resilient enough to withstand a lot of stress, but the financial crisis was deep enough that it probably would have put me in default on my debt. I would have had to renegotiate the debt. I would have impaired the equity. So that ended up being fortunate, although I didn't realize it at the time.
Of course not. So if we go back to that moment, how did it feel, your first exit?
Well, it felt really good because, part of it was because even though it was a good cash flowing business, it was mostly paying down debt at that time. So it was very much, just, keeping things going, paying down the debt. It wasn't generating a lot of cash flow net of debt service. And one of the things that got me to buy companies was that, as opposed to sort of just having, one company like a lot of entrepreneurs do, is that, I just had one company and I felt a lot of stress about that company. I noticed my investors in my company, because initially I didn't have any money, I had investors, and I was like, they seem like they have better lives than me. Like they're more relaxed, they're less stressed. Like, why is that? Well, they have 10 other companies like mine that they've invested in, or, lots of others. So if mine doesn't work out for me, it's a huge deal. It doesn't work for them. They have other things. And it made me, I was like, I kind of want to have a diversified, portfolio, but I didn't have, so that was the relief at that time was really this sense of not being so stressed about, having just one thing that can do really well or can do really badly. And I had it was funny, at that time, I was a member of an organization called Better Investing, which is still around. It's one of the biggest in the U.S., mostly operates in the U.S. There was a session there, and because it was about selling, about liquidity events. And a lot of these sessions about liquidity events are put on by like wealth managers that are trying to sell you something. Well, this is sort of a pure situation, so they weren't trying to sell anything. And I was so glad I went to that because they said, basically, if you have any sort of liquidity event, best thing to do is to do nothing. Resist. The temptation is going to be to spend a lot of money on something, personal expenses, or to go invest it. And there's all sorts of mistakes you made. And they're like, just when it happens, just do nothing.
Yeah.
Like do one little indulgence. They said try do one little indulgence. That's it. So I got like a nice jacket for myself. That's all I did. But it was just this wonderful feeling.
Okay. So what happened next? How did that feeling develop over time?
In that particular case, I think probably a lot of the people business owners that you interview, I'm sure they come in all different, to all different paths. but I think a lot of them all have sort of one business a large part of their career, and then they exit. And sort of in my case, it was more like it was basically 4 exits, which none were huge. I mean, they were substantial enough, but this first exit was where I knew I wasn't finished. Like I knew I had more to go, and also it was 16 years ago. So I mean, I was young and so forth, and so I knew this wasn't the end for me, but it gave me the luxury of choice more and some sense of security and a lot less pressure, and I could take my time to find the next opportunity, and I didn't have to stress so much about about how I would live and support my family and so forth. So it was so for me, it was a little bit less of a cliff or sort of a binary thing where I think now is very different because it's almost fully exited. I mean, I have a minority share of one of my companies still, and it's a different focus on lifestyle now and other things. But at that time, it was a sense of being able to have a more diversified portfolio, having more financial security, but still not a major pivot of life trajectory from doing business. Because I continued to do it for 4 years.
So what would you say were the key lessons you learned from your 4 exits?
So there are a number of lessons. I think it was the right path for me, given my skill set to essentially buy businesses that are already profitable. And for other people, they're better at starting companies and building them from scratch, or doing other things. That's different. But I think it was a good path. A lot of self-awareness is very. My self-awareness is very limited. Most people's self-awareness is very limited. It's very hard, I think, sometimes to figure out sort of what is, as an individual, what are you good at, or at least you don't have to be really good at. We just have to be good enough to make it work. So that I feel was the right path for me. It gave me a lot of autonomy. It gave me the ability to apply a lot of creativity into business, because I don't have artistic skills. I don't have other creative skills, but I had the opportunity to apply creativity to business and to the teams around me and to what we did as businesses, and that's a certain type of creative endeavor. And I had, a little strategy that I did, with all the businesses that I bought. It was a certain type of business that I decided early on, I'm just going to buy this type of business, and that's what I did. And I just sort of, there's nothing really dramatic about it, but it was really just applying the same concept over and over and over again for 20 years, and voila, something happened.
So basically, the strategy of building and selling businesses fit your personality, fit your skills, because you had that experience in the financial services industry. It gave you autonomy. It gave you a way to channel your creativity.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And what did you learn about yourself that was new because of the exits? What surprised you about yourself?
About the exit process itself?
Let me rephrase it. How your financial success changed the way you thought about your self, your personality, your identity?
Well, it's interesting. I think about identity. So for people who buy businesses versus start businesses, typically their identities are less tied up with them because they didn't create it from scratch. So it wasn't mine. It wasn't the founder of the businesses. So I didn't feel. My purpose was not to sell them. My strategy was essentially to continue to run them and grow them. And if a good offer came along, then to be open to that. But not to sell within a certain number of years, or it meant that I could have held them, for a long time, but they're fine. And but in terms of what, I think there are a couple of interesting things that come out of, one thing, a little bit. I'm not complaining necessarily, but there is a little bit of sort of grass is greener. When you're in the middle of something, you always think that whatever's going to happen after what you're doing now is going to be better, right? And I think there's a lot of stress around, having, there's a lot of vulnerability around having most of your, your assets and part of your identity around a certain business. And so when you sell it, I'll say one thing that, a lot of people think that, well, I'm going to sell the business and then, I'm going to be an investor, that kind of thing. And it'll be really exciting. Well, one thing that was a little surprising to me, even though I had some invested background, was that in comparison, it's actually, well, to me, it's less exciting than owning a running business, investing. Because, and it can be exciting for some people, but one reason is that, for a business, if you own a business, you can fail miserably, or it can go up 10x or 100x, right? But if you're investing and you're saying you're diversified and so forth, you can spend a lot of time and you make a return of 10%. And it seems that after tax, it's less than that. So it seems not very exciting compared to owning a business.
It solves a different problem.
It solves a different problem. But I think a lot of, and it's interesting, and I know you see it a lot, and I see it a lot, I mean, both see it a lot, where, a lot of people who are, who are entrepreneurs, business owners, they're not good investors, or they shouldn't be investors. And they try to be investors, and there are a lot of mistakes that are made, very common mistakes that are made. And that's, and I hope, I'm hoping that the people who are listening to your podcast are typically listening, hopefully before they exit or right when they exit, as opposed to after they made some of these mistakes.
Whenever they feel the most pain, because usually not before they exit.
Well, that's unfortunate. Yeah, hopefully, but I think that's certainly something that that I sort of learned. But the good news or the good side of it is that I'll scoop on actually one thing. It's so great you asked the question because it helps me think about it as well. When you think about sort of, okay, let's say, as a human being, we all have aspirations. And some of us just don't even know what our aspirations are, but we're just sort of, figuring out where our aspirations are, or maybe they're unconscious. And a lot of times they're constraints to them. And they're always some sort of constraint. And a lot of times it'll be very commonly, it's like, I don't have time because I'm really busy with my job or my company, whatever it is. And a lot of times the constraint is, I don't have money to do that. Because and when these constraints are taken away, there's still a constraint. And that, at least what I found, and that is then the constraint becomes different. It becomes sort of a constraint of creativity. Like, do you have the creativity to, and I would say not only achieve your aspirations, but figure out what your aspirations are. That takes there's certain art to it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been exercising that art during your career, it's like a muscle that you haven't used.
Yeah.
And
imagination.
Yeah, imagination. And so that kind of turned to working on that now. Is sort of figuring, okay, so most of the time, so many times after the fact, like if I do something and I think, oh, I didn't do that the right way, or it didn't happen the way I wanted it to, and I could have done it this way. I want to have fewer times where I realize afterwards, oh, I could have done it this a different way. I'd rather think of things more ahead of time in terms of how to best approach it. And so that, I think, is a realization that that changed me. That just to work on the major constraint of life is creativity, to sort of figure it out. And
how do you stimulate your imagination and creativity?
I don't know fully the answer. I'm still figuring it out. But I will say one thing comes to mind. There's this David Packard who founded Packard. I think he was an engineer. He founded a partner. He had this, it's widely known, this sort of management strategy of management by walking around. I think he wasn't formally trained in management, so he would just walk around the company, I think a lot during the day.
Looking for inspiration.
Yeah, and just talking to people.
Yeah.
And figuring out what everyone's doing and what are they going to train. And this became this philosophy of management by walking around. And that I think is super useful for anybody's a valid management strategy. Sounds so simple, but and also you create rapport and loyalty. And I think that there is something about that carries over to personal life as well. That if one just sort of walks around, and you're not just walking around company headquarters anymore, right? You're kind of walking around the world, or you're walking around your friends and your family. And you're walking around strangers, you're meeting new people, and you're doing it wherever you want to go. And it just talking to a lot of people. and maybe listening better than I used to listen before to people. Because I was so focused on something else. I was so focused on building my company.
Yeah.
That if the person, what someone was saying, didn't relate to, couldn't help me to build my company, I wasn't so interested. I hate to say it that way. I mean, I was interested. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm saying that that was my focus. And so just sort of, walking around life, walking around the people in my life, and even the people who are not in my life yet, and talking and hearing what is important to them, what they're thinking about. That's a way right now that I find inspiration.
So I assume you're trying to be present with them and try to be compassionate and interested in them. Would that be?
I try to be, yeah. I try to be. I mean, working on it.
Can we go back to what you said before? I thought it was very interesting. You said that there are common mistakes that entrepreneurs do when they try to be investors. Mm-hmm. So which such mistakes you notice that people make?
Well, there are two. I think there's several I noticed. I mean, one is, they spend a lot of money right up front on like personal stuff, and they end up regretting it. A second one is this drive to invest right away, and some of it there are a lot of things going on. One is that some business owners, entrepreneurs think they have an exit, and maybe there are all these articles in the press about how amazing they are, and all the people around them talking about how brilliant they are, their colleagues, their employees, and everything. And so people think they have the Midas touch, and that everything they're going to do is going to be wildly successful. And so it's very common for entrepreneurs after exit to just just invest in a bunch of stuff and have too much confidence in what they're investing in. And there are two problems. One is that they invest in bad stuff in generally, but then the other problem is this sort of vintage diversification or sort of business cycle risk. And then if your exit is in your, like, let's say my first exit was 2007. Let's say I invested it all then, it would have been a disaster right before the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. So this notion of, a lot of entrepreneurs, they invest everything right away, and it's the bad end cycle, and then they end up losing, a large part of it. I think a lot of business owners that exit, and especially it's been in the press, you get barraged with all these people all these investment managers and people with various investments and schemes. And so you get all this inbound, including friends, including people and may trust, which is okay. But, to be sort of reactive, to just wait to see what comes in, and to be reactive to it is a poor way to invest, as opposed to be more proactive and think, okay, so what are all the asset classes out there, and how do I want to be allocated across asset classes? And maybe instead of like the 5 managers who are approaching you, there are actually 500 managers out there. How do I look at all of them in some sort of systematic way? Get the proper help that has whose interests are aligned. It's a very different skill it's a completely different skill, investing versus owning a business, running a business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have false confidence that they're just going to do this, and a lot of them will just invest in a lot of people they happen to know, so they don't know very well, and sometimes unscrupulous people, and they end up, or they invest in a lot of companies similar to their company, which can be good in the sense that they know the business, but can be bad in the sense that they're taking out a lot more risk than they really think they are. So I think all of these things are super common mistakes, and I just I don't know. I'm curious what your opinion is, but I think the business owners who are become really good at investing, maybe like 10 or 20%. I don't think it's a huge. What would you guess?
I agree with you, and I think more often than not, these are people that also have some experience in financial services industry, or just have a very pragmatic personalities.
Yes.
Because another thing I noticed is that oftentimes entrepreneurs are not necessarily very pragmatic, and they build their businesses for passion, to solve a problem or something like that. And that mentality does not really translate very well into investors.
That's a great point. A lot of entrepreneurs, they don't assess risk very well because they've done incredibly risky things, and they happen to.
And it paid off.
It paid off.
Yes, it did.
May have been lucky, may have been luck, or may have been insight, or some combination of luck and insight, most likely. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Is that this sort of this sort of deaf ear to risk
Yeah.
is really bad for it. It's okay for an entrepreneur because you want to be really positive. You're trying to, persuade investors to invest and employees to be recruited and so forth. And you have to be super positive about it and not really, talk about the risk or think about it so much. But in an investing context, it's super dangerous.
Yeah. I actually made the mistakes you mentioned. I was overconfident. In fact, I was very annoyed when wealth managers approached me and were saying that I should expect, 3% return. I thought, of course, I can do better myself. And then I went angel investing and pretty much, lost all my angel investments very quickly.
Yeah.
Thankfully, learned that lesson. But I see other exited founders rush into angel investing, I think, for similar reasons.
Yeah.
Another reason is the identity thing, especially in the tech industry.
Yes.
Is that you want to feel that you still belong to the ecosystem. And
Yes.
if you're an angel investor, we see or have some other similar label, you're still an insider in the tech world.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. And actually, I'd even go so far as say that that angel investing as an asset class is a really bad asset class. In fact, I think even reading, the data supports that if you take an average, of course, average is, has terrible failures and great successes. When you average it all together, angel investing, sort of these early stake, early round, sort of equity investments are the average performance is terrible.
Yeah.
The worst, certainly worse than S&P. But yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs, they think they're going to do better than the average.
Yeah, I just thought people also feel it's a form of giving back to the startup community. But there's so many other ways to give back instead of spending money.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the other thing is that, in terms of, advisor or being on boards, that type of thing. And also I think for a lot of exited business owners, you can have separate buckets. You can have a bucket where, large short investments are going to these asset classes, and this other bucket of smaller amounts of money, just to help people, are going to go into early stage, and maybe it's small jets, but it's it's helpful, or something like that. Like there's a way I think to get back.
So what would be your investment advice to someone who just exited?
So I think so. First of all, don't do anything fast. That's the most important thing. I think it's totally. I think absolutely. And I had the same instinct that you did. Is like when all these wealth managers approached me, or I heard about them and so forth. I was like, I do so much better than they do. Delegating everything to a wealth manager is not a bad idea. That's not I learned this, or I finally realized that it's actually, now there's some wealth managers that are, here's what I think about wealth managers in general. I think the really good investors, the best investors, this formula that if you run a fund, where this sort of 2 and 20 formula with the 2% management fee and 20% carry, or plus or minus, that is so powerful that the best investors are doing that. They have their own funds, and you become, make a lot more money than if you're a wealth manager charging 60 basis points or something like that. And so I think the really talented investors, do that real one fund to get better compensated. But that's not to say that, I think there are a lot of talented wealth managers out there, and just the power of diversification. Frankly, I think, I think another thing is that it's not a bad idea to just have some division, just put, division between the S&P 500 or some index and maybe bonds, or maybe full S&P or something like that. And if the return seems low, it's actually the index is very tax efficient, because you don't realize much in gains until you sell. It's very hard to get that kind of tax efficiency with private investments. That's not a bad strategy. What I did, which is a little bit different, which it suits me for right now. I might end up with a wealth manager, but I hired there was another sort of segment. They're consultants. They're basically investment consultants, and it's not for saving money, because I'm probably paying them the same amount that I would pay a wealth manager. But basically, they pay them a flat fee. So they don't, and this is actually just so I'll do my own public stuff myself. I'll just do highly diversified. I don't do individual stocks typically and so forth. But These are companies that will follow, managers, investment managers in terms of, they have funds in all sorts of different asset classes. And the one that I've hired, covers, 200 different managers. They do a lot of work. Mm-hmm. They do it better than I could. And frankly, it's a lot of time. They do it better than I could. And if I even want to try to do it in the mediocre way, it would take me countless hours to do it.
Yeah.
And they don't care if I invest or not. Like, they have no incentive to do it. But they do a lot of work, and they help me to find, funds and managers that will work for my objectives. Mm-hmm. And that's, I have to do, I have some resource support, but I have to do some, like wealth management, while I admit and stuff. I have to get my own admit for it, and can send wire transfers and that type of thing. That's a model what I'm doing. So that's another law.
So it's almost like a family office, a small family.
Yeah,
office
if it's a small,
situation.
yeah. I think it's typically, the asset levels you need for a full family office are, it's debates, but it's at least, my opinion, hundreds of millions of dollars at least to justify, because if you want to have an investment professional, hire cost hiring professional, like someone as good, is high enough that it doesn't that you have to have that asset level to justify a percentage to what is present on a cost basis.
Let's talk about saying no to people who want money from you. How do you do that?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. I just had a dilemma the other day about that, and that is, there's always the option just not to reply, right? If someone I don't really know, then I just will reply, kind of thing. But in terms of someone I kind of have a relationship or something like that, and I couldn't decide in this chat to you the last few days that I'm going to try, if it's something that somebody that I have some sort of, that I care about in some way, even if it's just, doesn't have to be a good friend, it could be an acquaintance that I like, something like that. I think my policy is going to be to reply and just say no, and maybe say why, rather than just not reply. It's very tempting just not to reply.
What would be your why, though?
For example, if it's angel investments, I say, so they come in different categories. Angel investments, I almost never invest. Here's what I say I almost never invest in angel. I think it's a terrible asset. All the stuff I was saying earlier. I think it's a terrible asset class. Or let me put it, actually, let me rephrase that. It's a terrible asset class for me.
Yeah.
Some people, I think actually extremely few people who are good. Like, do you know any really good angel investors who are really successful? We talk about it a lot, but we're actually successful.
It's hard to tell, though, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, yeah.
Because you usually don't know.
Yeah.
And those who are successful, then you think, are they just lucky?
Yeah.
But I'd say these would probably be people who have some kind of inside information that others don't have, like they really know these particular founders. But even then, I think there's no guarantee. No. Because I did at some point decide that I'm going to only angel invest into repeat founders. Like, they have to be repeat founders. I was very excited about that idea until I realized that there was another problem there, that lots of repeat founders who rush into starting a new business when they're not ready, before they process their previous exit, and then they lose motivation. And that they just don't want to do it. That was my experience, for example. And then I thought, okay, that also doesn't work. So some founders were just inexperienced and didn't do a good job. Other founders didn't process their previous exit sufficiently, didn't make a good decision to start a new business, and that there's luck.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've defined your criteria pretty well.
My criteria is not to touch any investor.
Okay, so you and I are similar that way. So basically, for angel investors, I typically say, right off the bat, I said, I think it's a terrible asset class. I rarely do it unless it's some good friend or someone I really want to help. And for small amounts, I would do it there.
Yes, and it's not a financial reason. Right?
That's not not about their deal is bad. It's just I don't do it, period. Mm-hmm. And then if it's something else, I'll usually say what the reason is. I think the fees, it's not an asset class I want to be in, or not an asset class I want to add to. I already have enough exposure to it, or I think the fee structure is wrong, or the team's not experienced, or whatever. There are a whole bunch of reasons that I can usually say. I don't want to do like paragraphs, but in 1 or 2 sentences, and it's usually possible, I think, to just say why.
So let's go back to your first exit. Did you have self-doubts after that exit? Did you feel like, oh, maybe I'll never be as successful again?
Yeah, there's definitely, well, I feel it now more. I mean, at that time, I wanted to do more, so, but for sure, but the reason that I stopped doing it, my last exit, which was 2 years ago, and why I decided not to do it again is that, at 4 good exits and there's definitely, in any exit, there's a luck element to it, right? So, 4, like out of the 12 companies I bought, or basically 4 platforms, they all got good returns. They were good exits. And, if I roll the dice again, just by chance, somebody's, if I keep doing it, something's not going to work out. I'm going to have a problem, right? And so I don't want to, it's not so much, and, actually some of it is, and I'm older now, maybe, I don't know, it's hard to tell, like my skills, the same, certainly my energy level may not be as high as it was, 20 years ago when I had the, certainly desire and maybe the capacity to really work really long hours and that, the fly all over the place and,
because you've been quite hands-on in those businesses, haven't you?
Yeah, for the most, if all of them I didn't run them all the time. Sometimes I would, hire a CEO, or I would have had multiple ones going on at the same time. They were overlapping, a lot of them, and not always sort of one after the other. But for all of them, I felt it was important for me to, at least when I bought it, to start running it. And the reason was, part of it was financial, that, I didn't have to pay an extra salary or pay to myself and that kind of thing. But part of it was that what my plan was to hire a CEO. I wanted to know the business really well myself before hiring a CEO, because if I didn't do that, CEO would say this and that reason for this and that. I wouldn't know. Like if it's BS or not.
Yeah.
But if I run it, then I think had better capacities for a manager as a CEO. And that's why I did it, even though it was more work.
So you wouldn't consider taking a more passive approach now, because you wouldn't want to be in this situation when you're not sure what your CEO is telling you?
Yeah, that, and, I just wouldn't do it anymore. I mean, theoretically, yes. You get higher returns, potentially, the grass seems greener if you're getting sort of 10% as a diversified investor, let's say, or 8% or 12%, whatever it is. And, it seems like going back into it where you get, 20, 40, 50% IRRs, let's say, if you're really fully focusing on it, potentially for a private business, it seemed attractive, but I just told it today more.
But your strategy was to keep buying similar business, so it was a rings and repeat situation, more or less, wasn't it?
They were different industry. They were mostly software businesses. Mm-hmm. They were all leaders in their, whatever the market segment was. And when I say leader, it doesn't mean that, people said as leader, they had the largest market share in their market segment, even if it was a small market segment. Mm-hmm. And then there's low customer concentration and high recurring revenue in them. But they were all different. They all serve different industries. So I had to learn, kind of new industries, but there was enough commonality to have some best practices in some ways. And if you're the market leader also, if you're coming from another industry and you're buying the market leader, you get a little bit more, you're under a little bit less pressure. If you're already the market leader and a lot of customers will buy your product because you are the market leader, and you don't have to hustle at once, which you can make a few mistakes and the market will kind of forget. Whereas if you're not the leader,
you're forward. Would you recommend it as an investment strategy for exited founders to go and buy someone else's business and do what you did?
I think I think it's a little hard. It's more competitive now, so you're paying higher valuations. So basically, most of the time when I was doing it, I was paying about 5 times cash flow, 3 times cash flow. At that valuation, now they were high growth businesses but if you're buying at 5 times cash flow, that's a 20% return if it doesn't grow. Yeah, that's not bad. If it goes down, that's a problem. If you put leverage on it and you keep it stable, IRR goes up. Especially, if you're getting, now you can't get debt at 6%, but you used to be able to get it. And so that was my particular model. Now you're paying higher valuations. You have to be better at it. And you used to be like, you really have to kind of have to grow the companies. The leverage doesn't help you as much now at the current rates. So do I recommend it? Yeah, I mean, I think for a founder that doesn't want to do startup again, want to get business cash flow, I think it's great. It's a different game. It's a different game, and if you kind of know what you're getting into, that's what you want to do. You know what the game is, and you want to play that game.
And how do you go about it on the practical standpoint?
Well, if you have particular industry expertise, of course, the best place to go, and something that particularly, like I see it a lot with founders that are in industry, and then their non-compete expires. So 2 to 5, whatever your non-compete period is. So you take it easy for 2 years, or you work for the acquirer or for your company that you sold for a certain time. You take some time off, and if you want, and then your non-compete expires, and then you buy a company in the similar industry or the same industry.
But you bought companies in different industries.
I bought companies in different industries, but in terms of for a founder, I mean, that would be, I think, an easier or a better thing to do. And then then you could pay a higher valuation because you're more confident. I had to pay 5 times cash flow. It's a lot of times I didn't know the industry so well. So I was like, well, I mean, 5 times cash flow, like I can, that can be perfect.
So you clearly don't advise angel investing, but you think buy companies can be a good strategy. At what size of the company it could make sense to buy a company?
I think it really depends on your skill set. So if some people are founders that they're really good at sales and really good growing revenue, then you buy a company in the same industry that maybe already has infrastructure. Maybe ideally it's profitable, and actually may not be profitable, but you can grow it more than it's growing now. And you buy it, and then your strategy is just to implement, whenever the way you grew revenue in the previous company. That was never my real skill set, was growing revenue. My skill set was more about, I'm not sure what it was, more about sort of managing risk and kind of keeping things going. And so for me, it would be more around getting a low multiple going into it. But I think it depends. I think as an exit founder, you probably know what your skill set is, right? You know where you spend most of your time. Maybe you're an engineer and your focus was on product or something like that. You find some company that can really use whatever your skill set is, and you buy it. If you buy it, it's already okay. Sure, you have to pay for it. Like, doesn't cost zero, but you've saved 5 years of time, right? 5 to 10 years to me, whatever. You've saved years of time. And you've saved a lot of work, and you have something that's already in place, and then that's a great formula for success. And then a lot of it also depends on, in terms of your choice to do is what value do you put on control? So I mean, you can get a much bigger company depending on what you're asked, what your capacity is. For me, it was important to basically, initially I didn't have money, so I had to have investors and so forth. But it came to a point where, sort of control was important for me. So I had to have companies that I could buy that I could have sort of control of. And so that's for an exit founder to think about, do you want to be 10% or 20% owner of some big company, or do you want to be 100% owner of a smaller company, and or 51% owner of something in the middle? And that's, I think there's, I think there's a lot less risk if you're in control, but there are a lot of people who been very successful with non-controlling interest in companies, and they know how to play that game and to manage boards and keep investors on their side and so forth, and that's your skill set then.
So what did you do? How big of a stake did you buy?
So I typically did, initially I didn't have money, so I had to get investors, and I would get essentially founder stock, for putting it all together. And one of this, I think one of the things I'm a guest lecturer now at business school, and one of the things when I talk to students is about sort of, a lot of students when they say it's listening to a business school, and they get out and they interview a bunch of places and they get a bunch of job offers, and you can kind of negotiate, but you can't negotiate very much. And so basically my class is about, okay, you may not have that choice your first job or wherever you graduate, but think about how you can start to define the terms of how you relate to other people in the world. So how do you sort of put the deal together? So even if I didn't have money, if I found a company that was for sale or that could be for sale, and I sort of organized all the terms, and then I went to investors and said, okay, here's the deal. I'm putting together the deal. I'm in a position where I can define what I get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Stop being presented to me. So for example, the opposite is that, let's say a PE firm has a company that they want and they're hiring a CEO. They're sort of, putting together all the terms. The CEO can negotiate, a little here and there, but kind of just take it and leave it. So I think a definition of entrepreneurship generally can be about starting a company. I consider it more broadly.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial, it's around sort of defining the terms of how you relate to others in your life, in your financial life, in your business life.
Yeah.
And so initially I would sort of put the deal together and have, founder stock. And then as I got more exits, I had to take more. So eventually I would just take 100% of the company and close to 100%. And so that's how I did it. That was appealing to me and appealing to, and there also, there's, the tax strategies. There's various other reasons that I found that to be appealing. But there are all sorts of different ways, as you know, to build companies, and that just happens to be what I chose.
So when you achieved financial freedom and you knew you could just continue passive investing, what motivated you to still run a business and buy another business and be?
I think the returns were really they're really attractive. Okay. And I felt like I reduced some of the risk because I wasn't, there's that one deal I told you about, the first exit where I levered it 4-1, it was like 80% debt and 20% equity, and I put almost all the equity in that one, and that was because I had no choice. But it was a huge amount of risk which I didn't want to take, and then later I took less, but less leverage on it. It was less risky, but the difference was when I look at different asset classes, basically the reason I kept doing it, I'm not doing it now, but the reason I kept doing it for a while was that there were really only two asset classes where if I was successful or semi-successful, getting relatively high IRRs. And one was, buying these private companies where, as I mentioned, it's 5 times cash flow, so it'd be 20% IRR, but leverage on it, it's higher. And then if you grow it, it's even higher. So it could be 30, 50, 70%, IRRs. That's super attractive. It's very hard to find investments that get that kind of IRR. Then the other asset class, which is very attractive, is real estate. Okay, also partly because of leverage, partly luck, because, it was a period of time, starting in the 90s to now. I was doing some sort of side stuff, and this is more of a diversification for me that I was doing some real estate on the side. And in case my businesses didn't work out, at least I had, I could survive on, rental income, some rental income. And with leverage and with appreciation, 20% plus, 20%, 30% IRRs with real estate, which I think was super common, at least in the US, and I think a lot of places for the past 20, 30 years. Any other asset class, if you average it all together, a lot of people talk about, I got 20% on this or that, but if you really average together, you can get 20% IRR on this, or, and then, but then you have cash and you have something that lost money and you have something that got 2% or whatever it is, you really average together, it's like, 10%, 8%, I don't know, something like that. So it seemed, so to your question about why did I keep doing it, just the notion of having sort of passive diversified portfolio was not super attractive financially, especially after tax. And that's what made me keep doing it, because the returns are so much higher. So
it sounds like there was a financial motivator, which was the strongest up to now. So it took you 4 exits to satisfy that.
That's true.
But now you're no longer motivated
to correct
by that. So great. Let's talk about your motivation, which is not financial right now. So you want to explore the world, it sounds like, in a non-structured manner by just walking around and discovering the world. How do you think about how you want to grow personally over time?
I mentioned earlier about, that the main limiting factor is creativity. And so what does that creativity really apply to? And, a lot of it's around my relationships with other people, my relationships with the people I love in my life, my family, my friends, humanity in general, to some extent, to a large extent. And how do I be, and there's certain creativity in nurturing relationships that is meaningful to me at this stage of life. And that's really, I would say, more than anything, folks about life these days.
How about parenthood? What are the lessons you learned?
Oh, well, actually, so it's interesting to mention that. So, we were talking earlier about diversification, right? So you're a business owner, you have really one business, and it's super nerve-wracking because you could live or die by that business. And then over time you get diversification, and then you're less stressed about that. But then turning to my family life, I have one spouse, of 32 years, and one daughter. We have one child.
Yeah.
And wait a second, that's not a very diversified portfolio. Right? So that's like, having...
You better take very good care of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. So the same thing, the way that I had to take care of my business when I only had one business, now that sort of transferred itself to my family life, because, I have one wife and I have one daughter, and they're very important to me and very special to me. And, I don't have any other options. And so that's so it's very important and meaningful for me to nurture that and to, make it work and make it, satisfying, enjoyable, and obviously not just for me, but for them, because it goes both ways.
So do you feel you became a better husband and a better father since your motivation changed?
Well, I'm trying to be, whether I am or not. I mean, who knows?
I'm sure you are.
I'm trying to be. Yeah, I'm focusing on that at least.
Okay.
But it's a little bit like, that's a muscle I'm attempting to exercise more, working out more. And, I think like a physical muscle, it gets better over time and with intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my goal, at least. We'll see, talk to me again in 5 years.
I will. So what about your friends? It's like a bigger social circle than your family.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, having freedom of time is really important and helpful. So, it's like, when I was busy, if I had a friend who had a birthday party and it was in some other city, it's like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't come. It's so nice to say, yes, I can come. And come to that, no matter where it is, I'll come to it, and that's very meaningful to me. And that's and even to create events, so there's some events happen, and then there's also to take the time. And some people some people have time, some people don't have time. And so like, well, I'll organize some trip or some event or something like that. And in some way for us to connect and have meaningful time together. And so that's been something that's become more work to me, and is a source of fulfillment.
And you would say you are intentional about it, like with your family, you're more intentional.
Yeah.
Organizing time with your friends.
I'm working to, yes. I'm
You're very generous with your time with us.
Oh, well, those things I would do. So,
yeah. Thanks, yeah. Good to meet you. What else do you find meaningful in life? Well, relationships is really the focus.
That's where the focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's mostly, doing some. You're fortunate you don't have this in the UK, at least not at this time. But we have this issue in the US right now, where sort of democracy is under threat. So spending some time on that, on preventing another Trump presidency. But that's temporary. Hopefully we do that for next year, and see what happens. But my main focus, more long-term focus, is just to nurture our relationships and make the most of them. And I'm not a seeker of spirituality, but I'm thinking that I want to open a mindset to spirituality, to let it come to me, to be a little bit more kind of aware of my surroundings, and listen harder, and be able to it when I mean, I think it's totally valid to go and seek it, actively. I've decided I don't want to seek it actively, but I want to put myself in a position to receive it if and when it comes.
But you're a reader. You love reading. Do you read spiritual texts?
No.
By the way, you read
I
it,
don't
you
really.
just wait for it to come to you.
It's funny. I have not been. I mean, that I feel is a way to sort of seek it, and I haven't been doing that, or at least not in a simple fashion, sort of looking for it.
Why is that? If you want it in your life, why don't you go?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that somehow I feel that it's a great question. I've never been a big fan of these sort of I don't know if it is sort of self-help, books in general. I prefer to, but I don't know why. There's no good reason for it, because there's nothing wrong with it at all. Okay, but
You don't feel the need. No.
I don't even feel the need. I mean, I don't feel an impulse to do it, but it doesn't mean I shouldn't do it. But I shouldn't do it. I'm reading right now. We were at the Ford Museum last week,
Yeah.
and I picked up that biography. So right in the middle of the biography.
You're reading it.
I'm reading it now. He has a crazy life, Sigmund Freud. And there's some spirituality in that. So I feel spirituality pervades all sorts of aspects of humanity. And maybe this is hypothesis, so I may probably try to get thin ice here. But I'm going to posit the theory that, just reading about humans somehow encapsulates spirituality as well. It may be a little indirect.
If you look at all the different religions or philosophical texts, at the end of the day, spirituality is, or spiritual growth is growing from our selfishness into our selflessness, right? When we become more in touch with the universe and the divine. That's what it is. So, for example, when you tell me that you care about others, your family, your friends, and the humanity, to me, it sounds like you're growing spiritually. You may not define it that way because you don't feel the need to define it or put a label on it, but that's in a way what it is.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a step in that direction.
If you develop your own compassion, your presence, your love for others, and you appreciate your daughter and your wife more, to me, that's spiritual growth. Whether you read spiritual text or not.
I'd like to see it that way. That's part. Maybe there's more than that even, but that's at least that's a good start. And frankly, if that's all it is, that's very satisfying to me.
And by the way, I find reading about psychoanalysis very stimulating in terms of spirituality, because if you think about some subconsciousness, that's in a way also a doorway to spirituality,
Yes.
to the divine.
Yes.
Something that's bigger than us.
Yes.
We understood.
Well, it's interesting. So it's what's hard to tease out. I think you're right. It's hard. It's hard to tease out, and there's all this BS in the middle. There's that So it's a case of Sigmund Freud, who, he would. I mean, we saw his library. His library was actually a small percentage was about science and about psychology, and the majority was about sort of ancient archaeology and ancient myths and things like that. So Sigmund Freud, he saw out a total of 170 patients throughout his lifetime. He tended to favor people who were like wealthy or prestigious people, which that by itself says that it's not all about helping people, that he just loved hanging out with. And he put on a little bit of a show for his. So there's a lot of, for someone there's a lot of who sort of expert on the ego. He had a lot of ego himself.
Oh yeah.
And I think we all do. Very levels, but everyone has some level of that. And for someone who's so celebrated, look, what he did was ludicrous. He would, someone would come in and tell them their dream, and he would, because he read he'd say, oh, it reminds me of some ancient Egyptian myth. And this means you're in love with your sister, and blah, blah, blah. And then the patient would be horrified, and then, sometimes commit suicide. That's horrible. That's terrible.
Well, but it also sounds more shamanic than scientific.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, and there's a lot to spirituality that's shamanic as well. It's very hard to, so that's why, and frankly, if that's maybe, back to your question, maybe sometimes I'm skeptical about these books about spirituality. Maybe unjustifiably skeptical of a lot of these books about spirituality, or a lot of them, they say, here's the way to live like this. And then the next book says, well, here's another way to live like this. And, they all say different things. And maybe different things, certainly accept the possibility that different things are valid for different people, but something about it that is not appealing to me at this moment in life.
I wonder if modern self-help industry spoils it for you.
Yeah, a little
Maybe
bit.
you should go to, basic scriptures.
But they're also, these ancient texts are also
They're also
super confusing. Well, yeah, maybe, but I think it's a different issue. It's just, it's like before his experiences that he read all of these ancient texts and myths, and then he tried to apply them to, to modern life. And I think it was a total failure. He recognized that the conscious mind was important. He recognized that, sort of this talk therapy, sitting with someone talking has some benefits. I'm not saying, he was an important figure, and I think these two things are positive, but, the notion of, applying ancient texts to living modern lives, maybe somehow it can go wrong. Let me put it this way, it may be validity to it, and it probably is, but it can also go wrong.
That brings us to your teaching. So you said you're a visiting professor at the Business School.
Well, it's a guest lecture. So this is the Budapest Business School. So which is actually the oldest public business school in the world. I didn't know that either. It's from the 1850s or 1860. Anyway, I'm only there once a semester. It's not really it's just one session basically, but it's enjoyable in the sense of that there are these students who are about 22 years old, and they're it's just interesting to hear. I like to start by talking with them and ask them about, which they're not really used to. Like they're waiting for me to talk, and I was instead asking them all these questions, and they're a little caught off guard. I think, or not expecting it first, and then they started to get into it. It's kind of fun. It's fun for me to hear their perspective on things. But yeah, that class is more about. It's about entrepreneurship, but it's really about the broader sense of entrepreneurship. About don't look at your life as interviewing for jobs and getting offers. It's about how do you think longer term and medium term, and maybe in some cases short term, about how you define the terms of your relationship with the world.
What does it give you personally, teaching?
I don't know exactly, but it is definitely interesting to to hear about, to ask questions of students and just kind of hear how they think about things. And so it's and you hear the questions, and so it's just a shot in the dark that look, I'm here talking about stuff. Maybe it has an impact, or maybe it doesn't have an impact. I don't know. Or maybe some people, sometimes I'll hear from students, they'll find me on LinkedIn and they'll have questions. I just did a Zoom call with one of them a week or two ago, and wanted to talk about his career. And by the way, I think it's a really good instinct for a student or a young person. Most people, not necessarily interested, most people, a lot of people mentors don't take initiative. So the fact that, look, this guest lecturer came, and, to reach out and want to do a Zoom session, like I admire that in young people. So I think that, so I don't know if I'm able to impact or not. I I enjoy it. I have other reasons to be in Budapest, once a quarter. I'm not sure why. I do have some friends who are teaching classes, and they have to grade the papers, all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, nor am I qualified for it. But to be a guest lecturer at a single session, I can do that.
Can you talk about Hungary and your two books?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my first business that I started was in Hungary, and I was 25 years old, and I had all these employees that didn't speak English, so I had to learn Hungarian, not perfectly, but they could kind of communicate, and they did put up with it and tolerate it, and I'll occasionally confuse them with my diction, and now I have I do serve on the company board that's based there, but I don't have really any other business there. But I do have a strong cultural connection, and I enjoy keeping up with the language. And I did a couple of literary projects, and one of which was along with a close friend of mine's son. We translated a book about actually it was a Hungary bestseller from 1920 about the interpretation of dreams. Because I gave me a copy a year or two ago. And that was it was sort of like, interpreting dreams from A to Z. it's like a dictionary.
Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, and there's some Sigmund Freud that's drawn from, and there's some Sándor Ferenczi, who was sort of one of his colleagues, Hungarian psychiatrist, and then the author's various girlfriends. And I think I don't know if they had expertise in dreams, but I think his girlfriends liked seeing their names in the book, and then he had the author had a grandmother who was a gypsy soothsayer who had interpretations of dreams, so he put it all together. Anyway, that was really just a translation, and I wrote the introduction to it. And then that was the first book. Then the second book, which just came out less than a year ago, was this is a little bit of this is going back to entrepreneurship, and I talked about sort of the my appreciation, at least in the U.S. and democracy, which is so imperfect and has so many problems. There are so many societal problems in the U.S. I think if you were to ask any entrepreneur or business owner, like all the people you interview, it'd be interesting for me, at least, if you ask them, how much of their, success and where they find success is due to their own efforts versus the environment that they're in. And this second book that I wrote was really about that. And the specific context was that there was this Hungarian artist who was, first of all, he was born in 1899, so he was a young soldier of World War I, and there was an explosion next to him. He suffered partial paralysis of his body, so he had this war injury, and he had to rehabilitate himself. And, Europe, the 20th century was pretty brutal for most of the 20th century. And especially if you're on the losing side of the war, in two major wars, which Hungary was. Anyway, but he, was a tough, so he had the war, and then he had the revolution and the counter-revolution and multiple sort of economic depressions that happened. And this artist just kind of he was incredibly talented. His name was Albert Camus, and he had to, and he couldn't survive just being a painter, but he had to do 20 different things. He had to be like a stage set designer, a furniture designer, a graphic designer, and a book designer, and this, that, and the other thing to kind of pull things together. And he had this whole sort of interesting personal life. And then he emigrated to Chicago in 1940. He sort of saw the writing on the wall and what happened during the war. And so he left, and he ended up he got a job as design director in the largest company in the U.S. that made cardboard boxes, which could be very boring. Well, I mean, it's kind of boring because they're square brown, basically. Mm-hmm. And he was told by the CEO who believed that the art thing for role in business that, I will let you, your job is to make cardboard boxes beautiful. Not just make cardboard extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And so he pioneered this whole industry of packaging design that is in so many of the products that we buy, every day. And it goes in super like a day, for example, like the six-pack, cardboard six-pack of beer, and the cigarette box, and all sorts of things that we buy today. And he invented all these things, along with the graphic designs. And so this is a story. I think it's a story that, at least to me, is a fun, interesting story about someone's life. But a lot of it's about appreciation for one's environment, and sort of the and that there's so much glory in the individual, and individual accomplishment, individual courage. But if you don't have the right environment that supports that, it's really, really hard. It's really hard. And I think probably a lot of people that you interview, and if they're here in the UK or they're in the US or, in a lot of countries that, I would venture to guess whether they, well, I'd be curious to extent thing now, but I think so much of people's success are so much part of the environment that they're in, the system that they're in. Or it's an interesting conversation, at least to say, which is, because there's a role of the individual as well. I'm not saying it's all environment, but I think it's a interesting conversation about the difference between the environment and the individual in any trajectory.
So when I pushed you to tell me what's meaningful in your life, you didn't actually mention writing your books.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, just now, your eyes lit up and you spoke with so much enthusiasm about the books. So it's not something that you see you'll keep doing because it gives you meaning,
I might, it's a good question. I'm not sure if I will or not. There were certain, it's interesting. There are a lot of people who, they're a business and then they decide they want to write books, super common.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just hire a ghostwriter to do all the work. I know people have done that. Just like, we're talking about like business owners decide they want to be investors. I'm all for human resilience and human versatility and people saying they want to really do this well and they think they can do, something else well. That's great. Oftentimes, it doesn't work or it's hard, and it's hard to, be a writer it's very easy to write a book, to read a book and say like, oh, I could write like that, but if you actually try to write,
it's hard.
It's really hard. And the successful writers are those who have been writing for decades and they write every day. Like those.
Well, these days there's the AI to help.
I guess there's AI. That's true. I think there's nothing wrong with using. I mean, my personal opinion. I know some people think differently. I think there's nothing wrong with using. I haven't tried it myself. I use ChatGPT, but I haven't tried. But I think there's something wrong with using AI to write. The point that I'm saying is that it might, but it's fun to have the idea. My experience with writing is that it's very fun to conceptualize the idea. It's fun to do the research. Like when I was doing this biography, I was, interviewing all these people and I was going to all these archives and all this art. And then the writing was not quite as fun, but it was still pretty fun. And then all the editing and everything was super tedious. And I'm like, this is a lot of work and it's not very fun at all. So I might do it again, but we'll see. But it makes me appreciate people who are real writers who are, have devoted their careers to writing. It makes me really appreciate these people.
Yeah, of course. It's definitely hard work. So do you have a sense of purpose?
Having nourishing the connection with people, for me at this moment of life, my family, my friends, for me, that's enough with purpose. And what I'm doing sort of this year in terms of, some of the political things, for me, that feels satisfying. And, ask me in a year, I may tell you it's not, looking for something new, but I think at the moment that's satisfying to me.
So how do you think about a fulfilling life? Would you say the life today is fulfilling?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's fulfilling. I'm grateful that, health it's not forever. And frankly, also, every century there seems to be some major cataclysm where the world just falls apart. And that's not happening now, not yet. And so, but it will happen at some point, probably. Who knows when? So, I'm just, I'm very conscious of that and just grateful for, we have so many problems in the world and in our lives, but I think, there's a lot to be grateful for at this moment in time. And I'm just, want to hold on to it as long as possible.
So when you say gratitude is how you make your life more fulfilling, because you approach it with gratitude.
Well, I think, there's a lot of science, which I'm sure you're aware of, that, the actual expression of gratitude is a huge contributing factor towards happiness. So there's tons of data behind this. I'm not as systematic as, the best practice is to, like, every day you write what you're grateful for down in a notebook or somewhere. So I'm not doing that, but I'm doing some maybe lesser form of that. And in the sense of, having these kinds of conversations and just, reminding myself that we, having a healthy self and a healthy family and helping loved ones is something that's it, 2 year old.
How do you think about the legacy?
People are forgotten very quickly, and that people overestimate their capacity for legacy. And that even people who are very prominent in their day, so people who are prominent in the newspapers all the time, that kind of thing. Most of them, some of them, no, some of them remain on people's minds for long periods of time. Most people are forgotten within a few decades. So it's not a major motivator for me.
Probably. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anastasia.
You're wonderful and very grateful.
I'm grateful to you.
Thank you.